Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome a very accomplished and successful investor, a fellow IPOer from the state of Florida, USA, Mr. Vinay Tolia. Vinay, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Vinay is the managing member of Bengal Capital and the Bengal Catalyst Fund. He's an angel investor. And as I mentioned, he's a fellow member of the YPO. So Vinay, let's start talking of Bengal Capital. Tell me about this venture and what do you do here?
Sure. So this is a fund that I started with my twin brother. I have an identical twin brother. Started it in 2006. And back then we were just young kids and we were looking to do our own thing. We started trading derivatives and we grew that fund for almost 12 years. We were running it out of Illinois, out of Chicago. And then very kind of fortuitously, back in 2013, they changed the laws to allow for medicinal cannabis in Illinois. I didn't know the first thing about the business of cannabis, but we started talking to people applying for licenses. We wrote one of them a check, and that company is now one of the larger publicly traded US companies. So we started getting more and more involved in cannabis. And then we switched the nature of the fund from derivatives to cannabis in 2018. My brother managed all of our US investments and operations. I moved to Canada, ran a cannabis company in Toronto for 3 years. And now I moved back to the US, like you said, in Florida now, in Miami. And our fund it's myself, my brother, and we have two other main partners who are cannabis operators. So we really bring this kind of expertise of investing and operating in cannabis, and we're just focused on the US.
Wonderful. And cannabis has now become not just acceptable and official in the US, but in several other countries as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, when I was in Canada, we were focused on everything outside of the US. So we had operations in Australia and Portugal. And so it's fascinating to see kind of how the adoption of cannabis in these other countries has changed. You know, there's still a stigma attached, even in Canada, where it's federally legal, even in the US and states like California and Colorado, which have been recreationally legal for a number of years, there's still a stigma attached. So it's changing, but you know, as I learned kind of the history of prohibition, of alcohol prohibition. I mean, it took years after prohibition for this thing to be, for alcohol to be completely mainstream. So I think we're going to follow that same arc with cannabis.
Very interesting. But one more question related to cannabis, because I was speaking to some other people, and this seems to be a debate all the time with governments, even in India. Some states it's official and some states it is not. How do you differentiate between recreational cannabis and medicinal cannabis?
So this is an interesting delineation. Cannabis has been used for medicinal purposes for years, for centuries, right? So as far as differentiating, there are many kind of ailments that can be, you know, that where things like people who are undergoing chemotherapy, things like glaucoma, there's so many, pain management, so many specifically medical conditions that can be treated by cannabis. I guess the difference between that and recreational is taking a step back, is the question of, has this quote unquote war on drugs, has it had the intended impact? Have we seen usage go down? Have we seen, positive consequences of this? And I would argue, specifically in the US, that we have not. Cannabis use is as prevalent as it's ever been. We have millions of people incarcerated, and that's not. And anything I would argue that anything given, anything in excess can be detrimental. I mean, you could argue alcohol. You can easily argue that cannabis is much better for people than society than alcohol. Food in excess is bad for your health. So I guess in a roundabout way, to answer your question, to the medicinal thing, I would say, or put it in two buckets. Medicinal is we have this plant that's a natural occurring plant people have used for centuries, that we can treat these ailments and much more effectively in a less addictive way than all these opioids and other pharmaceuticals. And then on the recreational side, I would say it's a bigger societal question as making it, as coming after it and making it illegal, has that actually been beneficial to society? And so like those are the two ways that I would delineate.
Well said. So Vinay, I'm going to now move to something that asks you to wear your investor hat.
Sure.
And the other day I was speaking to one of the unicorns, one of the founders in India. And, he had just been valued at about $4 or $5 billion, and yet he was losing huge sums of money. So I said, wearing my maybe old age hat or whatever, or more traditional thing, I said, don't companies have to make profits? And his response to me was, you need special skills to lose money and yet get a valuation. I want to get your perspective on who knows valuation, the markets, the venture capitalists, or is it a multiple of EBITDA?
So that's an interesting question. And I by the way, I'm with you as these last few years is the old man who's been like, I don't understand a lot of this, so to answer your question, I think at the end of the day, the market always knows the valuation. At the end of the day, all these things eventually are priced in the public market. So when you see public market valuations, especially in growth, get clobbered the way they have the last 6 months, that will, it might take some time, but it will eventually kind of filter down into the private market, because it has to, because all those private market companies, the eventual goal is to either go public or be sold to a public company. So the laws of financial gravity still exist, and the end buyer of these things is almost always the public market. So I think that matters to the question of, I love that quote, take special skills. Yes, it does. And it takes special skills to lose money and increase valuation. And that is, you need to be, let's call it what it is. You need to be a gifted salesperson to be a CEO that can pull that off. And I feel like that's oftentimes a dirty word. When I was coming up, I thought I was an engineer by trade, and I was like, I don't want to do sales. That has this kind of icky feeling. And then after all these years, I realized that sales is the most important thing. Like doesn't matter who you are, you're selling something. You're selling something. And so like this idea that, technical people don't have to be salespeople, I find that totally false. And especially as a CEO, like, let's be honest, you are a salesperson. Your job is to sell employees on coming to work with you. Your job is to sell investors on why your company can be, massive. So yeah, I just want to say that as far as a CEO, and it does take special skills, which I think
I agree. So Vinay, let's now move to another part of our conversation, which is your avatar as an angel investor. Since we have a very large young population of viewers and listeners, let me start with a very basic question. What is the difference between an angel investor, a venture capitalist, and a private equity investor?
I think none of this stuff is formulaic, but if I had to bucket those things, it would be just differences in risk tolerance and difference in, obviously check size, but really differences in risk tolerance and timing, and how long these professional folks can expect to hold an investment. I think that I think in any of these things, I've learned the hard way,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the early stage things, is you need to be diversified. I mean, especially in the early stage things, you need to be diversified. You know, when I have in my day, I've had a couple wins, and I thought I was a great angel investor, and then I've also had a lot of losses, and I've realized that, you know, to be a successful angel investor, it's hard to differentiate between luck and skill. And, you know, I had a couple lucky hits early on, and I thought I was really good.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to figure out, was that, how much of that was luck, how much of that was skill? And, like, you know, that's why you see these guys who are the really the cream of the crop VCs. They can do this over long periods of time, and so that you can say, hey, that's skill. These guys have replicated this for a long time. I think the same goes for any of these guys. Like, it's very easy to get lucky, not easy, but you can get lucky for a short period of time, but like the true kind of cream of the crop is, can you replicate this over different market cycles, and, you know, and over a period of 15, 20 plus years.
Well said. My next question for you is that what are some of the key metrics, or what are some of the parameters you look for before you decide to make an angel investment?
So on the angel side, I think it would be different than on the private equity side, right? On the later stage, like you need to demonstrate some kind of product market fit. You'd be much more you'd be much more willing to, not willing, you'd be much more attuned to the financials and all that. But on the angel side, this is incredibly cliche, but I've lived through this enough to see how valuable this is you need high integrity people. On the angel and curious people. On the angel side, you're going to have so many pivots. Like, what the only thing I was like joking with founders is when they show a deck in projections, and I say, you know, the only thing that is certain about this is that you're going to be wrong. Like, that's the only thing that's certain. Like, and you just need high integrity people who are curious, that where you can know how to pivot. And it's a very unnatural thing. And that's why most of these things fail. Listen, I've been a part of a bunch of some of them that have not gone the way they've gone, or that we thought. And like, it's very unnatural to live in that amount of uncertainty. People want to de-risk and have a spreadsheet and give themselves a false sense of security when they can project out 2 years, where, you know, really at that stage, it is so uncertain. You can't predict 3 months from now, let alone a year from now. So yeah, you need that characteristic of the team and founder. I think that's what we look for.
But, you know, there is another question that is often asked by a lot of startup entrepreneurs. Should they bootstrap as long as possible, or should they raise money as soon as it's available? What are your thoughts?
It really depends on, one, the market cycle, you know, what the market cycle, and the kind of business that it is. There are certain businesses, you know, we're involved in, on like cannabis, that can be very capital intensive. So in those types of businesses, it does not make sense to get cute and try to, you know, raise as little as possible. You know, we saw a lot of this the last couple of years. The market has been so hot, not in cannabis, but in tech, where you'd meet people who were just trying to bootstrap, and then they'd say, okay, we're going to raise another round in 6 months at a double the valuation. Well, they were getting away with it, but now that's all changed. And now, you know, as you very well know, having been through this, is 90% of the game is survival, is staying around, right? And so if you try to get too cute and just solve for trying to minimize dilution, you're not going to survive. And especially now, where the market's kind of come back down to a more realistic kind of plane, it's just about survival. So like, I would say depends on it depends on the state. So given that we're in a certain this specific market, depends on the industry. But no, I would not get cute here. Like I would, if you have access to capital and you can get it and ensure your survival and dilute yourself a little bit or even a lot, I would go that route.
Wonderful. Great advice. My next question to you is that at what stage do you look for an exit?
I don't think there's a formula for this one. Again, I think that you really have to look at the playing field. Are there people around that? Are there other companies? Eventually, competition comes for everyone. Is there a competition? How is the market valuing you? Is the market? Are we in a hype cycle where the market is super excited and bullish on growth? For example, I'll give specifically in cannabis, the market's really depressed right now. It'd be hard pressed to tell a team of really good operators right now to look for an exit in cannabis, because you're not going to get a good multiple, and the market's the market's kind of depressed. So this is another tough one. Depends on the industry, and it really is dependent. It depends on the market. So I wouldn't say there's no like checklist of if 1, 2, 3 have happened, you should look for an exit. But I think the two things is what stage of the cycle are you in your specific industry, and what is the market telling you as far as competition in your industry, just to even think about that.
Wonderful. My next question, Vinay, is and again, this has been asked many times by many people: how involved does an angel investor get in the governance of a startup?
I think that depends on what the founder wants. I think the best angel investors, I won't say the best. There's some angel investors who the founder knows exactly what they want, and at the end of the day, it comes down to the founder, right? The angel investor is here to serve the founder. We're all just trying to help the founder. If the founder wants help with governance and the angel investor can provide that to them, I think that's great. And I think that's the best angel investors are folks that can add value outside of a check. So if that's a way that the founder can, that the investor can add value to the founder, fantastic. But there's other situations where the founder has experience with governance, knows what kind of governance they want, and just says, "Hey, I'm just looking for a check. This is how the governance is going to run." Again, it goes back to having a high integrity founder and team. So I think it's really on a case-by-case basis on what the founder wants. I don't think that there's you don't necessarily always have to take a board seat and blah 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 if you're an angel investor. It depends on the situation and what the founder is looking for.
Well said. So I have time for 2 more questions. My next question, and I've asked this from many angel investors. There are lots of investments you make, and there are several you don't make. Tell me about some of the ones that got away, and and every angel investor has a portfolio of those, saying, "I wish I had made that decision." I'd love to hear some of these from you.
So this is dig up the past, a lot of regret. So one of the things that I missed is which has actually come back down to earth recently, but a lot of the Amazon aggregators. So these businesses that were buying Amazon companies for cheap multiples back 4 or 5 years ago, and ended up becoming these massive unicorns. I thought that they were too expensive back 5 years ago, and was proven completely wrong. I will say this. I have gotten over. I've gotten over this. This is, I think, a lot from my trading background,
Mm,
where you're running a portfolio, and the last thing you want is you don't want a mistake you made in the
mm,
past to
mm,
affect what you're currently doing. Like, you just kind of, when you're running a portfolio, you're trading, all you can do is focus on the current environment and the future. That's it. You can't think about the stuff that you missed from the past,
absolutely.
because it'll kill you. I mean, how many people do we, everyone knows people who have essentially become paralyzed from just thinking about what could have happened, what should have happened, and all that. So
Correct.
so I have definitely, I've definitely had evenings where I've been like, sulking about all these things that I've missed, but then I just realize you just
Oh,
have to let it go,
absolutely.
because
I
it
agree.
can
That I
actually
agree with you
paralyze
completely.
you.
Completely agree with you. So my last question to you, Vinay, and this is for the many, many people who will be listening to our conversation. Based on your vast experience in the financial world, as an investor, as a trader, what would you say are three lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away from our conversation?
Three lessons. Okay, so I would say, even, so I have this experience trading, and then operating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I alluded to this earlier on in our conversation, but one is, sales is not a dirty word.
Mm-hmm.
It especially as folks like us
Yeah.
and technical folks, we often view that as a dirty word, and
Yeah.
it's not. It's
Mm-hmm.
not if you cannot communicate to humans, which is what sales is. It's
Mm-hmm.
relatability and communicating to humans. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how good your product is. It's not going to go anywhere. You can't build a team without sales.
Correct.
So I think that's one thing. And I also think that, another thing is, and I still struggle with this to this day. And I alluded to this a little bit when you were asking about,
Mm-hmm.
um, what we were talking about, the role of luck versus
Mm-hmm.
skill in
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
angel investing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still not sure
Mm-hmm.
how much of my investing career, like, I've spent a lot of time dissecting this, and I'm still not
Yeah.
sure about how much of it is luck and what part is skill. And
Correct.
what I'm trying to do
Yeah.
is isolate. Hey, what is it that I'm really good at, and
Mm-hmm.
what is it that I'm not as good at? So, what can I lean into, and
Mm-hmm.
what do I know I need help with, so I can talk to other people about that. So my second thing of advice to people is, really try to find what is your superpower. We all have it, and we all
Mm-hmm.
have weaknesses. And so, make sure that you're leaning into your superpower,
Yeah.
whatever that is, and that you're getting help with whatever your weak points are. And that takes a lot of self-reflection. That's really hard. It's
Correct.
really hard to look yourself in the mirror and
Yeah.
admit to yourself that, hey, I'm not I'm not that good at XYZ.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Mm.
so those are, let me see, what's another one? Um,
That's okay. That's okay.
it's good. Yeah, those are the two that
Absolutely.
really
I think what you've
just
told me are two amazing things. Sales is not a dirty word. Very, very powerful statement. Because somehow or the other, whether it's in the financial community or even in the fast moving consumer goods, it's always said I must be in branding and not in sales. And I think that's a very powerful statement you made, and I must remember it myself. And the second one you told me is, what is your superpower? Is it luck? Find your luck versus skill, and I'm sure there's a balance or a combination that evolves for each one of us between luck and skill. On
Mhm.
that note, Vinay, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about Bengal Capital, about your amazing journey in the world of cannabis and how you've built businesses. And I'm sure cannabis is good for us. I mean, from the country that I am in now, cannabis has been taken by our holy people forever. and of course, it's becoming legal in many of the Indian states as well. Thank you also for talking to me about angel investing and some of your own philosophies and your thoughts about investing. And I'm sure that'll be very, very valuable to a lot of my viewers and listeners. Finally, thank you for speaking to me again, and good luck to you.
Ashutosh, it's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.